and welcome back to another episode of the Autopography Podcast. This episode is going to be about like the equipment I use, the general sort of pography equipment, so your burner, your sort of maybe blowtorch, the sort of different types of burners, and then a bit of sort of like office equipment, so obviously your pencils, printer, and just sort of general bits and bobs. But before I get in, it crossed my mind, I've never actually asked, how's everyone doing? It's a new thing. Pography is not exactly a big topic, so I didn't expect a lot of people to be sort of watching these my videos, my shorts, let alone the podcast. So yeah, how's everyone getting on with these episodes? Are they helpful? Be great to know if anyone is finding these helpful. Obviously, like I say in most episodes, if anyone's got any advice for me, please feel free to comment or personally message me. I'm always looking to sort of learn and sort of expand my skills, shall we say. But yeah, I just thought I'd ask how everyone's getting on. And if I have inspired you to at least take up or try pography again or whatever, or any art form really, it's not necessarily have to be pography, just any sort of art form, please feel free to comment and say how you're getting on. But yeah, anyway, into this episode. So I'm going to start with a few bits and bobs that you don't need for pography, but just sort of take it, sort of your pography or your burn or your project just to that next level. That sort of adding a little bit more detail, a little bit more zest, a little bit more life, a little bit more, zhuzh your piece up, shall we say. So I'm going to start with like basic wood files. I've got pictures of the stuff I'll probably put on screen, but I just thought if I had them in person, it just looked a bit better. So obviously you got your flat, it's just basic wood files. I got a set, I think, of 12. So you've got like 6 diamond and then 6, I'm not quite sure what these are. I'll put it on screen, what they are. But I primarily just use these 2 wood files. They've lasted a good year and a half now. They're still perfectly well, still perfectly working. So with the flat one, I'll use this for sort of pieces like pieces where I sort of need to, if I've either overburnt or sort of added too much sort of burn, I'll like go over it and it sort of almost takes it up with sort of completely taking the burn away, so it almost like sort of fades it out a little bit. So I use it as less like with the point, it's more to sort of fade it. I primarily use files sort of after blowtorching, just because with the blowtorch it sort of smooths it out a little bit, less of sort of lines and sort of different patches of sort of burns and textures and tones. With the blowtorch it sort of smooths it out a bit, and you just sort of go over it with the file and it almost creates sort of it sort of unsmooths it, but also takes a like thin layer off, so it sort of brightens it up a bit. So if you were looking into using files, hopefully that was helpful. With the, I don't know what shape you would call that. It's sort of just like pointed at the end. It's not round though. It's like thin point, bit wider of point. There's quite a few tips or quite a few files in there that have points, and I did snap one end that was really fine and it was like absolutely perfect, but obviously due to it being so fine it snapped in one of the burns or one of the pieces, so I've sort of ended up using that one. So this particular sort of file I'd use for like fine whiskers or getting sort of a bit like with the flat one. It's if you put enough pressure on that it sort of just glides over the wood, so it takes a thin layer off, sort of fades it, but creates like a lighter line, mainly for like fur, and with like elephant trunks it's quite good for sort of definition without taking too much of the burn off, obviously, so it sort of fades it a bit, but it just helps create that sort of more natural effect, but also gives it pieces a lot of definition, or at least in my opinion or experience. it definitely helps create sort of structure and form without taking too much layers or too much of the actual burn off or too much of the like wood out, because some woods, obviously the wood will go with it, and obviously that's not great. So you got your like, or at least in my experience, the beech I found with 2 of the beech pieces, they were quite sort of not dense, so the wood would come up in clumps and it just didn't work with the files too well. But most woods, so your sycamore, your beech, not beech, yeah, most woods, so your sycamore, your cherry, splat beech, coincidentally, it's a bit weird almost. I do think those 2 bits of beech were just like sort of one-offs where the wood wasn't great, or I'm not quite sure what happened with those. I need to try again. I think I actually did buy a bit of beech. That's splat beech. That's walnut. I can't remember. But yeah, I think I'm going to try again with beech. I think I just got some bad pieces. Anyway, so onto the like wireless sort of engraver, less sort of wood files and like a proper engraver. This isn't exactly like a professional one. It's sort of like a cheap end one, because I haven't replaced it yet. I'm looking into getting a sort of more expensive one that's sort of more professional and sort of more sturdy. This is I broke it within the first couple uses, but I think I was just putting too much pressure on it. So you need to really be careful with these, because the more expensive you go, obviously the more expensive it is to replace. But this one's quite handy for like creating an outline for like whiskers. So obviously, as you can see in the background, you've got Chilling Jag. For the whiskers on that one, I would like pencil the whiskers, obviously design or sort of the way the whiskers would flow, and then go over it with this to sort of create sort of almost an indent, because obviously I accidentally broke the motor, so it's not great for actually doing engraving as such. And then I would get my wired engraver, which is a bit more heavy duty. It's really noisy as well. It's only a little thing, but packs a punch, as they say. And then just sort of go over what I've engraved or indented with the engraver, just to get the whiskers. There's probably a better way of doing whiskers, but that's just how I do them at the moment. I've got in one of my pyrography books, it does tell you how to do whiskers properly, but it's more for sort of having whiskers that go into the background rather than onto the animal. So it's quite hard to get that sort of effect of whiskers if it goes on to, obviously, across the animal. With Chilling Jag, the whole entire piece is just whiskers go onto the jag itself, so it's quite hard to create that effect from the book. So you just sort of improvise, create your own techniques, create your own way of doing things. So those are sort of the engraving and sort of files part of pyrography. They're not an essential at all. If you're just starting pyrography, I wouldn't suggest sort of investing in them. If you happen to have them, grand, just sort of experiment with it. But depending on where you are with your pyrography and your sort of confidence, just sort of mess about with your burns, see what medium works for you, sort of whether that's animals, patterns, combination of animals and patterns. Obviously, I primarily work with just sort of doing the picture. That's just how my brain works. I can't really like sort of have an animal in like the woods, because I'm not great at sort of burning landscapes and stuff. People have suggested doing it, but I'm just going to stick with my animals for now, because I don't. It's supposed to be an enjoyable process. I'm not doing it for making money. I just happen to have enough pieces that going to markets, going to fairs, just seems to make sense. Just to make a bit of money to buy some more wood and just sort of do it like that. I'm not trying to make a big business out of it, and obviously artists require cuts as well, so that just sort of, it's just an enjoyable process. I would like to make a business out of it, but it is what it is at the end of the day, isn't it? If I'm able to pay the bills and maintain sort of my mental and physical health, and pyrography is quite a big part of sort of my mental health and sort of staying calm. And so if I'm stressing about, trying to get a burn done, or, trying to do what people like, not necessarily demand, but a sort of suggesting, if I did every single thing that someone suggested, it'd be quite a stressful process. So it's just sort of building up your confidence. I am trying to slowly build up, sort of doing more, because I originally only started with one animal, and now I'm doing a few pieces with two. So you've got your family stroll, your beach fight, as you can see in the background, both the happy couple and proud partners, 2 lions. I know that happy couple is like 2 halves that aren't actually connected, but it's still 2 pieces technically. But yeah, anyway, back to the equipment part of the video. Though it's not equipment, I would also, a big suggestion is make sure you have a drink with you, or in my case 3. Whenever I have like a day off, or at least the morning off before going to work, I try and have try and have a sort of an espresso, just to sort of wake up a bit. I try and have an espresso in the morning, not as a sort of wake me up, but as a sort of getting into the zone of like whatever you guys are doing. Obviously mine is pyrography, just to sort of get into the mindset of what am I going to do today, what am I going to try and get done. Not set a particular goal, just sort of what would I like to get done. Record a episode of the podcast, or prep a bit of wood, because obviously I've got work later, so I know that I'm not going to be able to start the burn, because if I get into the mindset of starting the burn and then I've got to go to work, I'm in like a burning mindset when I'm at work. So obviously I'm not going to prioritise starting a burn. I'll just sort of either design it, or if I've printed off a design, measure up the design to the wood, cut the wood, and then see where I go from there. But I use the espresso as a way of sort of, because obviously I grind the beans myself, as a way of sort of dragging out the process, and I quite enjoy sort of doing it all myself. I don't really like the sound of the grinding machine either, but I just use it as a way of sort of thinking about what I'm going to get done, getting into the zone, because I've tried sort of just jumping into the deep end and getting on with it, and it takes so much longer to try and get into the zone sort of unnaturally than sort of just coming down and slowly zoning in. But obviously you don't need coffee, you don't need espresso. At least a glass of water, or in my case, a nice big bottle of water. Sorry, I had to. Or even if it's just like a small can of fizz, or whatever tickles your fancy, just make sure you've got a drink, and obviously staying hydrated, because obviously with burning you can obviously heat up quite quickly, especially if it's warm weather as well. Just stay hydrated. It's just common sense. Just, I didn't need to mention it, but I just thought, if I've got me drink here, I might as well mention it while I'm here. So yeah, just if like me, you want to zone in, don't necessarily need to have all the fancy equipment that I've got. I'm very lucky to have the equipment. It's most of my stuff is just like been gifted to me. So people come together like at birthdays and Christmas and go, "What do you want?" And I go, "Can I have an espresso machine?" And they go, "We'll see." And then thankfully, yeah. So I'm very lucky to have what I've got. You don't need anything fancy, even if it's just boiling the kettle, making yourself a tea, coffee, hot chocolate, whatever tickles your fancy. Just use that time to sort of zone in, figure out what you're going to do for the day. Don't try and don't plan 101 things. Just one thing at a time. You can sort of plan it in your head while you're doing the burn, or whatever art form you're doing. Just take it easy. Nice. Just, it's supposed to be an enjoyable process, isn't it? It's supposed to be enjoyable, so just relax, enjoy it. If you're going to stress about it, then there's no point, because you'll start stressing, you'll mess up, and then you'll get more annoyed with yourself, and it's just a vicious cycle. So yeah, just, even if it's just filling up the water bottle as well, just like 10-15 seconds. You can run the tap a bit slower, 30 seconds, depending on how big your water bottle is as well. Or, however you get in the zone. But I just use making a drink as a way of getting into the zone. Whether that's an hour or 6 hours of whatever I'm getting on with in the day. But yeah, sorry to drag that out, just a bit of rambling. Back to the equipment. So, where was I? I'll go on to the blowtorch now. So, I think I did at least 2-3 years without a blowtorch. It is by no means at all an essential, but it's very handy for it, or at least in my case, like creating like a smoothing effect. So obviously you might see in the videos, I'm not sure if I speed them up a bit too quickly so you miss the blowtorching. There are actually a few videos of me blowtorching here and there. So yeah, it's by no means an essential. I think I did like 2 or 3 years without using a blowtorch. I just happened to come across saw one of the pyrographers I follow on I think it's Instagram. They were using like a blowtorch to sort of I think it was black out the background. So I was like, oh, I'd quite like to do that, because I had a few images saved with black backgrounds, and there was a few images that sort of caught my eye, and I was like, oh, I wonder if doing like a black background would make that image sort of like pop. So I sort of invested. I saw the particular brand they used, and I was like, oh, I'll invest in that, because I think it was like 50 quid for this particular blowtorch. So I invested in it, and it was probably one of the best investments I've made for pyrography so far. Other than obviously my razor tip burner, but I'll get into that in a bit. So with the blowtorch, I use it for sort of either smoothing out sort of burns. So I've burnt a particular area or like texture of an animal. So like a elephant trunk, for instance, I will burn sort of the wrinkle, burn the line of the wrinkle, burn sort of around to create that sort of almost sort of wrinkle effect on it. Burn it round, might file it a little bit just to create that sort of depth and sort of 3D effect, shall we say, of the wrinkle. And then I will go from the top of where I've burnt, like where the wrinkle sort of creases together, burn down, sort of smooth it out a bit, and then obviously do reverse, and then meet in the middle where it's obviously a bit lighter, and then I'll probably file over it again, maybe even burn over it again. But with the blowtorch, you've got to be really careful, because if the flame is on, that's the thing with the blowtorch as well. I found that you don't actually need like it really like blasting out a flame for it to like create like a smooth or even burning effect. With the flame, it's like that's perfect for doing like blackout backgrounds. But if you're doing like a smoothing effect, especially if it's on a smaller piece, or at least with this particular blowtorch, which is quite a bulky head, if you have a flame, it will burn it quite quickly. And I've ruined, or almost ruined, because I file it, but it's quite a risky technique. So you can still create that effect with the burner, it just takes a bit longer, but obviously with a blowtorch it's a lot riskier, so you can actually ruin a whole piece. I've almost done it with a few pieces, but luckily I've been able to file over it, or even get some sandpaper and sort of sand it down a bit, and salvaged most of the pieces. But I think there's been 1 or 2 pieces where I've had to either walk away from it or get rid of it, or I've walked away from it and then sort of developed my skills and gone, oh, I can fix that now, come back to it, sorted it. So yeah, it's quite a risky technique, or a risky tool to use if you're sort of first starting. So that's hence why I didn't use it for 2 or 3 years. I sort of didn't know about it. I don't use it all the time. Most burns are just sort of with the pen and files, and obviously an engraver and just sort of your basic stuff. But you don't need fancy equipment to create fancy works. I've seen absolutely amazing works with like solid nibs, and I don't know how they do it. I require something a bit more fancy, a bit more technical to create my work. But yeah, there are some talented people out there. But anyway, carrying on with the blowtorch equipment, I don't know what this particular one's called. Anyway, so I'll use this if I'm doing like a blackout background to sort of protect the design, whether I've burnt it or not. So you'll go over the design and then burn underneath. Obviously just go around the work, burn underneath. That's the other thing with using a blowtorch is, if you can get a small knife and you have like the sort of skill to sort of curve the knife around your work and get as close as possible to the work, then you'll create that black background nice and neatly. But when I've done blackout backgrounds, I don't know if you can see parental guidance. I don't want to grab it. There's a few pieces on top of it, and singing in the dark actually. If you look closely, the pictures you can't see it, but if you look closely, you can actually see where I've burnt it with the burner and then burnt with the blowtorch, because it's like a different sort of burn effect. With the blowtorch, it's sort of more smooth, more natural, whereas with the burner, obviously you can see sort of each line. But I think there's a way around that, but I'm still trying to figure that one out. I think if you have it at a medium temperature, like medium to high temperature, it burns just dark enough that you're not there for like weeks on end trying to burn like small lines around it, that it creates that sort of smooth effect. Obviously you're never going to probably get as smooth as a blowtorch, because obviously a blowtorch is an open flame, and with using sort of nibs, it's metal that's heated, and it's never going to get absolutely perfect, but it's the way sort of the light reflects off it as well. So you don't want to burn it too quickly, because it sort of almost creates like a carbon layer that the light reflects off of, and it's quite hard to not see that, shall we say. But yeah, like I say, it's literally, pyrography is one of, or at least in my experience, one of those forms of art where you're just constantly learning how to adapt, how to make it a bit better, how to do it, how to make it your life a bit easier to create the best effect. Now onto the nib cleaners. So you've got, obviously, whether you've got solid nib or wire nib, you need to sort of maintain and sort of, not necessarily clean, but maintain and sort of clean, I guess, the nibs. Because obviously if you've got carbon build-up, the machine, whether that's solid or wire, obviously they're quite different machines. One's obviously in the pen, and one's obviously like a box. You don't want your machine to be overworking, because obviously the more it's overworking, the more likely it is to break or not work as sort of properly as possible, and then obviously that could lead to like a fire, like it overworking and overheating and combusting, possibly catching fire. I don't know. There's a possibility though, because obviously it's quite hot, quite high temperatures you're working with sometimes. But yeah, so you've got either like a brass wire brush, quite rough on the nibs, and over time will obviously can start to damage them. I have found with one of my nibs, the one nib I use quite often for like every piece, it slowly started to sort of, not necessarily decay, but sort of like it's taking a little bit of the metal away at a time. I've been using it for 2-3 years now, the same nib, so it can't be too invasive, but obviously over time it will probably end up breaking. So I'm not sure if any other companies do it, but I know that Razor Tip, you have like I've taken this out of its case, because I found when I was scraping the nibs, I was catching the box. Can you see it in? It's quite a little thing. It's essentially a bit like with the filleting knife. It sort of comes to a point, so it's like a bit sharp on the edge. So just be careful, you don't want to cut yourself. You just essentially, when you've got the burner on, instead of sort of turning it off, I mean, you could turn it off so that obviously, unlike me, you don't burn the plastic. You just sort of scrape the nib, take as much of the carbon off as you can, and then you just carry on burning. With the solid nib, I wouldn't say use this, 'cause it's such a small little thing. I think this is actually designed for wire nibs, so probably don't use this one. Use your brass. But I've seen a few people, like I've read into people using like tea strainers, like the sort of ones that close over, and then you sort of shake your solid nibs in that, and then it sort of takes the carbon off. It's just whatever works for you. Just sort of be careful so you don't damage your nibs, because they can be quite expensive to replace, especially with wire nibs. Some of them are like 25 quid each. I think I might have one or two that were quite expensive. I don't think they're 20 quid each, but you don't need to spend that much on nibs. It just depends on what nib you're buying. It's like with wire nib, it just depends on what nib you're buying, whether you need that sort of specific nib for a specific job. Most of the nibs I use are sort of a bit, not necessarily because they're cheap I've bought them, it's just because they're sort of like they're multi-use, so you can use them for whatever sort of design or layout you want to use them for, I guess. I don't know how to describe that. Anyway, I guess onto the burners now. As I've shown previously, yeah, this was my second ever solid nib burner. I just didn't want to get rid of it. I just thought it was a bit sentimental, really. Oh, I haven't cleaned this. Look at that. Oh, you can't. It's not focusing. Damn it. Oh, you can't see it very well. Sorry about that. So, yeah, with solid nib, it's literally solid nib. Put it on the end of whatever you call that rod, the heat rod. Put sort of the sheath, shall we say, over. Screw it on. The reason I don't use it anymore is because I think the thread on this is sort of giving way, and it kept coming off while I was burning. And obviously, burning at temperatures of like north of 400 degrees, and it falling onto the wood as well, burning like solid burns onto the wood isn't great. Surprisingly, this being my second solid burner, I had to then use my first one, because the first one I bought wasn't necessarily sort of designed for pyrography. It was more of a soldering iron, but obviously the temperature was still controllable, so I had to start using that one because this one broke. I just thought it was quite funny that it wasn't this bit that was falling off, it was the bottom bit that was falling off. I think that's probably why I kept it. But yeah, with solid nib, you're quite restricted to how many sort of nibs you can buy. I haven't actually looked into it, but I'm fairly certain there's like only maybe 6, maybe 10 nib. It's sort of quite restricted to how many nibs you can buy, whereas with wire nib, there's like hundreds of different nibs. I think there's probably about 20 sort of essential nibs, and then every other nib is sort of for a specific job, so writing, lines, scales, fur, feathers, this, that, the other. I think there's like even like wax nibs that you can like write in wax, like really fancy stuff. With solid nib, it's perfect for people who want to sort of experiment with pyrography, because it's not necessarily cheap. I think looking at around maybe 20 quid for a solid nib. They should come with all the tips and stuff, because it is primarily a soldering iron that they just go, oh, you can do pyrography with it, so they just throw the name in there with it. You can get fancy ones. I'm not sure how expensive they are. I think you're probably looking roughly around probably the same price. Yeah, with a sort of more professional solid nib, I think they are a bit more expensive, probably about 40-50 quid, but I'm not 100% certain on that, so don't quote me on that. I didn't really look into it because I didn't think it was. I'd done so much research on which one was sort of easier to use, and I was like, oh, wire nib's quite easy. It's obviously a bit of investment for sort of the middle ground one. They're around £70 to £100 for sort of your middle ground wire nib. I don't currently have. Can you see it in the background? If I move my mic, there you go. It's all wired in, and I've got the wires sort of tied down, so I didn't want to drag it out just to sort of go, here you go. I'll put a picture on screen. I'll put a picture on screen of the burner. This by no means is an essential. It's just simply, I just think I'd gone through about 2 wire nib like machines, because I got a bit of a cheaper one, I think maybe for 50 quid. I don't know how I managed to do that. And then it sort of packed up after maybe a year. Yeah, a good year. And then so I replaced it with a bit more of an expensive one, I think maybe 80-90 quid. The middle ground sort of burners can handle high temperatures for a long time. They're not I don't think they're particularly great at sort of maintaining their temperature as such. I don't think they're necessarily designed for it either. I think you're supposed to do it for like half an hour at high temperature and then take time out, just to let it sort of cool down and manage the heat, shall we say. So yeah, I went through quite a few pens because I didn't really think about it at the time, sort of messing around, sort of doing burns, not really thinking about maintenance of sort of temperatures. There was nothing in the books really to say make sure you sort of, if you go for a middle ground one, don't overuse it, or don't like push it to its limit. Yeah, and then after maybe a year and a half of sort of going through, so yeah, after about two and a half years, about two and a half years of using sort of a mid-range like wire nib burner, I was like, oh, I wonder if I can sort of up my game, shall we say, and sort of big investment in a sort of professional burner. And so I was looking around, and there's not an awful lot of companies that do pyrography pens. I think I was primarily getting them off of the same website. So yeah, I was looking around, and there's only really one sort of company that do. So yeah, I was looking around for like wire tip burners, and there was only really one company, and that was Razor Tip. So I looked into like investing in it and seeing sort of whether it was worth the investment or whether just to sort of carry on with my middle ground. And I'd seen a few sort of pyrographers on Instagram who'd use them, like or a few pyrographers that use them on Instagram, and I'm like, I can see that it definitely ups the game, the quality of your burn, but is that just because it's more expensive and sort of more of an investment, or is it just about skill and technique? So I was thinking about it for about 6 months, and then sort of my pen was sort of packing up. You can sort of tell when they're sort of packing up because you have them at a certain temperature, and obviously after about 6 months you get used to it, but then it slowly started sort of not burning as dark, and it was sort of, I had to keep putting the temperature up gradually for about 2 or 3 months before it sort of really I had to pack up. So I was like, I'm going to make that leap, I'm going to make that investment in the Razor Tip. And it took me a good 2 or 3 months actually to sort of transition from using my old machine to just using Razor Tip. So it did take me a bit of time actually to adapt to the Razor Tip. I've got the SL1. It's like sort of their most basic professional one. So they do sort of less, should we say, professional sort of basic ones. They're a bit cheaper, and I was like, I don't really want to, especially due to the fact that they're based in Canada and they'd had to post it all the way over to the UK. I didn't want to be buying like 2 machines because of the carbon footprint, and sort of at the time, I think there's only one retail seller in the UK, or at least I can find in the UK, that do Razor Tip. Is Yandles in Martock, which is in like southwest England. Obviously they have to put their prices up because they have to get it imported from Canada, I'm assuming. I'm not quite sure where they get theirs if it's not from Canada. Obviously they put their prices up as well, so it was a bit cheaper actually to get it imported from Canada myself. So obviously I don't like the fact that carbon footprint's there, because I could have gone to the that sawmill, but you know, it's weighing it up really. But anyway, so yeah, I've been using the SL1 now for about maybe a year and a half. Absolutely the best one of the best investments I've made so far in pyrography. Probably, well, more than the blowtorch. It's definitely, I've seen a huge improvement in my work. Surprisingly, actually, I think it was a month before I purchased it, because it took some time to get here. I did, which piece was it? I think it was actually Chilling Jag. I did with my sort of mid-ground burner, and I was like, wow, how did I achieve that? I was doing sort of, in my opinion, like mid-ground sort of burns, not sort of as realistic as I wanted, and sort of didn't 100% flow. And then I did Chilling Jag, and I was like, how does that compare from the last piece I did? Like, how have I made that sort of jump? And I think sometimes with, or at least in my experience, things just sort of click after a while. You do a few pieces and then something just clicks, and then you sort of just, like with driving, you just, for the first couple lessons you have to sort of think about the pedals, and then after a while, or at least with manual, you don't think about it, you just sort of automatically do it, and then you're like, oh wow, I did that, I did a thing. But then when I got the Razor Tip, I felt it just got a little bit better, but obviously it was not as good to start with, so I sort of almost took a step back as well when I first got it, and I was like, oh my god, I think I've made a mistake. I've made this big investment and my work's a bit worse. No, it's just about taking the time to essentially relearn to use a wire tip. It did take me a good month or 2, maybe even 3 actually, to sort of get to that sort of mid-ground. And obviously like I said at the beginning of this video, you don't need to get this fancy equipment. I just find that having that more sort of professional equipment gives me the confidence to create the work I do. You don't need to have this fancy equipment. I've seen plenty of pyrographers use solid nibs and create work that is far beyond my abilities. But obviously I'm still learning, still adapting. And it's just about having the confidence, really. This whole video is just me sort of going through my equipment, my experience, my evolution of equipment. It's just all about personal preference and sort of personal experience and skill. And a lot of pyrography is just about confidence. Having the sort of confidence to do it and sort of belief in yourself. Because I found with a few pieces, I'm like, if I do that a bit darker, will it sort of ruin it? And it's sort of also the way you do burns, or at least in my experience, I have to do it like if I do an eye first. Obviously, with a lot of my work, I'll start with the eye and then work off of that, because I just feel like it gives it life before it's actually sort of even started, really. Because I've tried doing pieces and then doing the eye last, and I'm like, I don't like the piece at all until the eye's there, because I'm like, it's just got no life. It's just a lifeless burn. It just looks like scribbles on the wood. And then you put the eye in and I'm like, oh, that's amazing. That's wow. How does it come to life? The eye gives it life. And it's just that, I guess that's how my brain works and sort of processes information. And, obviously me being high functioning autistic, I guess, that's just how my brain works. But I'd be interested to know if anyone else, whether you're neurodiverse or neurotypical, whether that you have to start in a particular way in order to stay in that sort of mindset of positivity. Because obviously once I've got a bit of negativity towards a piece, it takes me a bit of time to sort of adapt and appreciate a piece if it sort of doesn't go the way I want it to. So that's primarily why I think I've only just started doing markets. It's because A, I haven't had sort of enough work, and B, I haven't had enough work that I'm happy to display. It's taken me a couple years of sort of practice and sort of acceptance, shall we say, of my work. One of the problems of I think with being an artist is you've got to accept your work yourself before you can truly accept other people's compliments. Because people are always going to compliment your work, whether it's crap or not, isn't it? It's like that with children, isn't it? Children aren't, well, I don't know, there are probably quite a few kids out there that can actually do a really good drawing, but your stereotypical child is like macaroni on a bit of paper and you're like, oh my god, that's amazing. It's to build the child's confidence, but you do that too much and the child becomes overconfident and then believes they can take on the world. So it's having that balance. But when you've got so many people going, oh my god, that's amazing, oh my god, that's amazing, you almost need to counterbalance that yourself, don't you, with, well, it's not amazing, is it? Look at that bit I did before. The tail flows. With this one, the eye's wonky, the tail is going the wrong way, and the fur direction is backwards. How is it amazing? It's just sort of yin and yang, having a balance. But as per usual, I've gone off on one. This video is supposed to be about equipment, isn't it? And I've gone off on one. So I'm not going to do a huge bit about office equipment, just sort of what I personally use. So I use, obviously, images off of social media, it's primarily Instagram. I don't get a lot of Facebook. I don't use Pinterest too much. I should really start using it a bit more, but it's harder to contact photographers and sort of the original owner of the image. So I'll get an image off of Instagram, save it, and then when I go and buy wood, I have a rough idea of what I want to put on there. So I'll go through my images. So say an elephant, for instance, I'll go through my images of the elephants, choose an image. Obviously, I've named it with the photographer. I'll contact the photographer and be like, do you mind if I use your image? And they go, yeah, go ahead. So then I go on the computer, use the software to put the image on, because I'll change the page size on the software to obviously what size I would like the wood, or whatever size the wood is, and then put the image on, try and sort of align the image with the wood, and then print the image, carbon paper, rough obviously design, and then sort of go from there. So yeah, so I'll use the computer for getting the image, scaling up the image, and then print out. But obviously you don't need a printer. If you're able to do it by freehand, congratulations, you have more bravery than me. I don't feel confident enough to do it by freehand because I need it like as perfectly shaped as possible, and then obviously I can work from there. So obviously you've got your computer, your printer, pencil. I personally have found in not using a pen on the wood, but if you are using carbon paper, it can be handy to use a pen so you know where you've gone round sort of the outlines and stuff, because it can be hard with pencil, especially if you're printing it in black and white. So that's another thing actually, is when I choose an image, whether it's in colour or not, I will edit the image. You might be able to see this on my Instagram, Facebook, social medias, or even a short actually. I might link it below, of me editing an image. So I'll take the saturation out and then change the sort of contrast, the brightness. Might even try and sharpen the image a bit, not too much, because I found that it almost like pixelizes it, so it makes it even harder to see. By changing the contrast and the brightness, it almost creates that sort of burnt, like that sort of the textures and tones that you need for pyrography. So you don't need any fancy equipment. It's literally just basic photo editing, because I've read into getting like software and it's just like, is it worth it if I can just edit it with basics sort of photo editing and it works? Grand. But if you've got the facilities to edit it nice and properly, edit it in a way that obviously it comes out looking like a pyrography as such, then grand. Hopefully it makes your work a bit easier to do, but I'm happy printing it in black and white. So that's pretty much it for pyrography equipment. I won't go into social media because obviously I'm not a massive social media aware. I'm still learning bits and bobs here and there about social media, so I probably won't do a video on social media unless obviously one day I absolutely blow up, get over 10,000 followers on Instagram, and I'll go, there's no technique, it's just a stroke of luck really. Right song with the right video, or this, that, the other. So yeah, that's your basic pyrography equipment with bit of office, and then rambling in between all of that. So as per usual, I hope this video was helpful. If it was, please feel free to comment, like, subscribe, just so that you get maybe a notification to say, matey boys put a video up or short up. Feel free to look at it, feel free not to. Not most of my content probably isn't suitable, or not suitable, sorry, isn't sort of for everybody. Bits and bobs for different types of people, whether you're experienced burner just looking to have a laugh at someone trying to do burning, or you are a beginner looking to get into pyrography and you chose someone who's still learning. But then I guess we're all learning, aren't we, whether that's pyrography or not. We're all just sort of cruising through life trying to figure it out. But yeah, as per usual, rambling, sorry. So yeah, feel free to comment whether this video is helpful or whether you've got any suggestions for me. I'm always interested to know what equipment other people use, whether you've got literally just a burner or whether you've got 1,000,001 sort of files, sort of a file for this, file for that, blowtorch for this, blowtorch for that. Obviously there's quite a few different sort of blowtorches. You've got your basic lighter, this, that, the other, but I won't get into that too much. I will say, actually, I did forget to put that in with the blowtorch bit. If you are using a blowtorch, very, very, very big suggestion, shall we say, or would be a really good idea if you're going to use a blowtorch, fire extinguisher. I will obviously put this in because I'm going to do like a short, it will probably be very short, sort of health and safety video, just as a sort of, if you haven't thought about it, here's a few suggestions of things that I do or should do as such, because I don't think, speaking from experience, I don't think all pyrographers do as much as they probably could or should to sort of protect themselves, but I think it's more of a sort of convenience thing, sort of wearing gloves, wearing a mask, fire extinguisher, this, that, the other. If you did like this video, please feel free to like it, put a comment below, just, you know, say hi, potato emoji, or any suggestions for me, or even what equipment you use. So yeah, cheers, see you in the next one.